Okay, let me click on one thing here. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to round 2 of the Denver Regional Colorado High School Mock Trial Tournament. I will be your judge for this round. I'm David Arkell. I'm not a real judge, although I do a lot of arbitrations. I am a lawyer, though, and practice, and I volunteer as a judge for the mock trial program. Have been doing it for, I don't know, 12 or 15 years or so, since I was a coach at my son's high school, for my son's high school mock trial team, and have stayed with the program since then, volunteering as a judge at the regional and state tournaments, and also during the run-up to the tournaments, I occasionally am invited to judge some scrimmages between the various schools. And I do that. I've stayed with the program because I really believe in the value of this program to the students. It's a wonderful program. It teaches you lots of things. It's a lot of hard work. There's a reward for some and some disappointment for others in the outcome, but it's still the process, the journey, getting there is worth it. And for those of you that have been in the program for more than 1 year previously, I think you agree with all of that. But let's go ahead. I will ask everybody who is not directly participating, if there are coaches or teachers or family members or friends that are on the screen now, please turn off your audio and video. And I think that will make your entire screen disappear from the view of the active participants. So please do that. You can, having done that, you'll be able to listen in and see, but we won't see you. Let me see, I guess, yeah, can the scoring panelists see everybody that you know of on the line? If not, just unmute and tell me so if there's any kind of a problem with the audio or the video. And if not, if you're okay, you don't need to respond at all. I just want to make sure that you are tuned in to follow the proceedings. Okay, hearing nothing, the panelists are all on board and connected. I need to go through a few things here. I'm sure you've all heard these. Certainly you heard them yesterday, maybe in prior years, but it's good to be reminded. Pay attention to timing. If you go over your time limit, the scorers have the option, the discretion to mark you down for that. So if you are, even if you're not done, but your timer says stop, you should stop immediately in mid-syllable if necessary. Just stop, because that can be, if you keep talking, that can be a detrimental to your score. Well, let's go ahead and go through the swearing in process now. typically, I mean, if this were live back in the old days, I'd ask everybody to stand, but I'm not going to do that. What I would like you to do, group by group, as we go through this swearing, just raise your right hand. I'll trust everybody to do that, and then either nod your head or just don't object if you have any, or if you've heard the swearing in language and you agree with it. So let's go ahead. First, I would like all of the people who would be in the gallery behind the bar, essentially, that are not actively participating in this. Please raise your right hands. Let me see. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? Okay. Next is team members. Please raise your right hands. Do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Okay, thank you. Scoring panelists, your turn. You promise to adjudicate this mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition. Okay. Witnesses. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts, procedures, and rules of mock trial competition? Okay, thank you. What I'd like to do now is go through introductions of the student teams. So first, starting with the plaintiff.
Hey, Marty.
I'm sorry. Starting with the plaintiff, would you introduce yourselves and your witnesses?
No, I did go into the courtroom. Okay, I didn't know we weren't supposed to do that. My bad.
Sorry, may I proceed?
Well, just wait. I'm waiting.
I'm going to get out and I'll try to find the link to get in right away. Okay.
Mr. McPhail to lead us.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thanks. Sorry. Bye.
Okay. Now, please proceed. Unmute. There you go.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ella Walsh. I use she, her pronouns, and today I will be representing the plaintiff in the case Dakota Weirs versus Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. I will be performing the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, as well as the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams. Permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves?
Please do so.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Ahmad Dar. I use he, him pronouns, and today I'll be conducting the direct examination of Ms. Carson Durst, the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs, and will be delivering the closing statement.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Kai Wong. I use he, him pronouns. Today, I will be conducting the direct examination of Mr. Dakota Weirs, as well as the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt. And additionally, I will be performing the opening statement. Permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Charlie Jones. I use he, him pronouns, and today I am Dakota Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Lily Biederman. I use she, her pronouns, and today I am Carson Durst.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is David Varholak. I use he, him pronouns, and today I am Dr. Casey Rogers.
Okay, thank you. Defense?
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Angelo Durbano, and today I'll be conducting the direct examination of Skylar Weirs and the direct examination of Carson Durst. May my co-counsel introduce themselves?
Yes, please. Please.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Daniela Guadana. I will be directing Dr. Devin Williams, crossing Dakota Weirs, and giving the opening statement.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Alyssa Avila, and I will be directing Blake Doncourt, cross-examining Dr. Casey Rogers, and conducting the closing argument. At this time, may our witnesses introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Jeffrey Delgado. I will be playing Blake Duncourt.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Jasmine Castillo, and I'm playing Dr. Devin Williams.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Janelle Merlos, and I'll be playing Skylar Weirs.
Okay, let me ask the students from the Orchid team, when you're speaking, please try to face your microphone. The audio was okay during the introductions, but I want to be able to hear everything, and there was a little tail off in the audio when you were facing a little bit away from the microphone. So please try to pay attention to that during your presentations. Thank you. Okay. Does either team, starting with the plaintiff, have any preliminary matters to cover?
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Your Honor, the plaintiff requests that during the duration of the direct examination, the crossing attorney keep their camera on, and during the duration of the directing attorney keep their camera on as well.
Any objection to that from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so ordered.
Thank you, Your Honor. We request that we may reserve remaining time from the closing argument for rebuttal.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
So ordered.
Thank you, Your Honor. We request that the timekeepers be the ones to screen share exhibits.
I will allow that. I'm getting an echo. Is anybody else?
Yeah, there was for a moment.
Okay. I will allow that, but I would require that the exhibits not be screen shared until they've been admitted.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any objection to the request with that caveat from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, and in that regard, I will consider, and I'll ask the scoring panelists to consider, after an exhibit is admitted and is screen shared, that will be the equivalent of publishing the exhibit to the jury. That having been said, I would still ask you, upon an exhibit being admitted, if you could ask permission to publish it to the jury, and just do that and then screen share it.
Yes, of course, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, a few more. We request that in the case of a technical difficulty, such as difficulty screen sharing or a potential disconnection, that time be paused until the issue is resolved accordingly.
Any objection to that from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, and I will need to rely on the timekeepers to pay attention to that, but I request the timekeepers, if there are technical difficulties, please pause your timing. And in fact, this happened yesterday, a couple of times when there were audio problems and we didn't hear a couple of questions and answers, at least understandably. And in that instance, I requested the timers rewind their time for 20 seconds or 30 seconds or whatever it was, so that there was no charge for that time when it was essentially wasted time because of technical difficulties. And this is all addressed to the timers. I need to rely on you to do that. Do not rewind your timers unless I ask you to. So, okay. Anything else from the plaintiff?
Yes, a couple more.
Okay.
Okay. Given the virtual nature of this trial, we request permission to sit or stand at personal preference.
Any response?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, I think that's part of the rules anyway, but that's fine. It doesn't make any difference to me whether you're standing or sitting.
Thank you, Your Honor. And finally, we request that all rights afforded to the plaintiff are also afforded to the defense.
Response?
No objection.
So ordered.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all that I have.
Defense, do you have any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor. I ask that after exhibits have been admitted into evidence, my timekeeper may be permitted to publish exhibits to the jury.
Yes, that will be done through the screen share process once they're admitted, and that will be the publishing process for this, because of this format, will be the screen share that will be deemed to be publishing to the jury.
Thank you. I also ask for purposes of clarity, because there are two members of the Weirs family testifying today, that is necessary we permitted to refer to them by their first names.
Any objection from plaintiffs to that?
No objection, Your Honor.
So ordered.
Your Honor, we also ask that all witnesses be constructively sequestered. We designate Blake Doncourt as our party representative today.
Response from
And
plaintiff?
we also,
Go ahead.
my apologies, I was gonna say, we also ask that masks may be removed during direct examination and cross-examination for both the attorney and the witness.
Response from plaintiffs to either of those proposals?
No objection to masks. Is it necessary for us to appoint a lead witness, or is it okay if solely the defense does?
Well, the request was sequestration of witnesses, and I believe that the rules of competition do not allow that. And I will not allow that irrespective of the rules. I think it's important to this process to have all of the participants listen to all of the proceedings as part of the educational aspect of this thing. I think it's in the rules, but I haven't looked at that for a long time. That's an unusual request, but notwithstanding, I mean, not because it's unusual, I'm going to deny that request and allow all of the participants to at least listen in to all of the proceedings.
Thank you, Your Honor. With that, the defense is ready to proceed.
Okay, is plaintiff ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor, plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Okay. please do so.
May it please the court. Dakota Weirs was a healthy young man with big dreams and a bright future. He radiated positivity like a sun, giving those around him both warmth and kindness. He worked hard in school and he took up a job at a local soup kitchen to give back to those who had less than him. And people began to notice the National Honor Student. They began to notice the boy who worked harder than everyone else to give back to everyone else. They noticed how when Dakota Weirs sat down at a piano, his love for his grandfather flowed into his fingertips and into the hearts of everyone around him. But all of that talent and passion and heart has been bottled up because Lush Fertilizer chose capital over compassion. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Kai Wong, and today, alongside my co-counsel, I am representing Dakota Weirs. Dakota Weirs worked in the fertilizer industry for several years, during which time he was exposed to the chemical known as Drufo, an exposure which would change his life forever. As the plaintiff, we must prove 4 things. First, we must prove that Lush Fertilizer produced the chemical Drufo, which they used in their products. Second, we must prove that Lush Fertilizer had a duty to warn or protect its users from the possible harmful side effects of their product. Third, we must prove that Lush Fertilizer failed to protect or warn Mr. Weirs from any of the harmful side effects. And lastly, we must prove that Dakota Weirs suffered significant damages because of the negligence of Lush Fertilizer. To that end, you will hear from Carson Durst, a former employee at Lush Fertilizer who worked with the company for 3 years while they were producing Drufo. She will testify that Lush should have known about these risks, but chose to put their customers in potential danger to earn more money. You will see an email which was sent by the company, which asks employees to which asks employees to present their findings in a positive light. Carson will tell you that Lush left out data which they didn't like and was possibly harmful to their customers. And finally, Ms. Durst will tell you that Lush Fertilizer conducted research which was rushed, unfinished, and they should never have put out their fertilizer to the public. You will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, a professor at UC Berkeley. He will tell you that because of a lack of sufficient studies on Drufo, as well as a shocking study which points to carcinogens, points to cancerous effects on rats, he conducted his own personal study on the chemical. You will learn that his study was performed over numerous years and on a wide range of people. And he will tell you that that study concludes that there is a concerning link between Drufo and cancer. He will then tell you that because of his interactions with Drufo, Mr. Weirs was 10 times as likely as the normal person to develop cancer. You will also hear from the head of Lush, Blake Doncourt. They will admit that they did not bake their fertilizer, a process which would have completely made their product safe. Completely safe, and they didn't do it. Dakota Weirs will tell you how he worked at Haven Landscaping, specifically with Lush Fertilizer. He will tell you that he was young, and while he may admit that he didn't wear protective gear, he will tell you that as a 14-year-old, reading Lush's label, he would never have expected to develop the cancer which he suffers. Additionally, you will see that there is a spelling mistake on that label, which somehow slipped by Lush's development team. You will learn how hard life has become for Mr. Weirs post-diagnosis. He will tell you how he barely has energy to move around his house, much less outside, that he would pay an endless amount of money in order to make this pain go away, and that Lush has potentially stolen 60 years from him. Lush has stolen his passion, a passion which started when he was a young boy working at the Keys with his grandfather. You will learn how Dakota had a bright academic future at Juilliard, but that was stripped away from him, all because his illness stops him from playing the piano, his greatest joy in life. Dakota will tell you how he worries for his future, not just his academics or his piano, but also for his way of life. After you listen to the evidence, we believe that you will find Lush Fertilizer completely liable for the cancer which Dakota Weirs suffers from today, and must pay a recompensation of $11 million. Thank you.
One thing I neglected to mention as a preliminary matter, so everybody knows, and I think other judges also will pause briefly between events in this proceeding, like I'm doing right now. And that the purpose of that is to allow the scorekeepers to stay current with their scorekeeping. That's a very important part of their job, is to stay current event by event. So I will pause probably for, well, certainly less than a minute between witnesses, and occasionally between direct and cross, or between cross and redirect, for that purpose. The timekeepers are requested not to record that time, and of course not to charge it to either team. You can charge it to me if you want, but that won't do you any good. I will, so that's what's going on. There will be those brief moments of silence, essentially, while the scorekeepers are staying current. And I apologize for not having mentioned that from the get-go. That's what I'm doing right now, essentially. So defense, please proceed with your opening if you're ready.
A famous author once said, "People who jump to conclusions rarely alight on them." In other words, use your reason, common sense, and evidence to guide you to an accurate conclusion. Your Honor, members of the jury, my name is Daniela Guadana, and along with my co-counsel, Alyssa Avila and Angela Durbano, we represent our client, the defendant, Lush Fertilizer. Lush Fertilizer is one of the world's largest companies who produces yard and commercial fertilizers while working to build a better tomorrow. After many years of hard work and commitment to the community, Lush has become a successful, valued company through its green methodology. Now, they're being falsely accused of causing Dakota's cancer. Please remember, the plaintiff holds the burden of proof in this case. Dakota Weirs must prove that it is more likely than not that out of all of the other chemicals she used, and out of all of the other environmental conditions she was exposed to with her work as a landscaper, it was Lush and none of the other products that caused Dakota's cancer. As the defendants, we have no burden to prove anything in this case. Instead, we will show that it cannot be concluded that Lush Fertilizer is responsible for Dakota's cancer. Only leaping to conclusions could give you this result. You will hear from the plaintiff's witnesses, and you will quickly realize that they have leaped to conclusions. Carson Durst will tell you about their limited industry experience at the time of Jufo's research and will acknowledge never looking into Lush's data underlying Jufo's safety. Instead, Carson leaped to the conclusion that Jufo must have been unsafe, even though there was no evidence to support this conclusion. You will also hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, who will talk about a study that shows an alleged link between Jufo and cancer. But the study was flawed. It failed to account for other environmental factors and did not consider the possible carcinogenicity of other fertilizers. Additionally, the study was never peer-reviewed or replicated. May I remind you that these are two critical pieces of the scientific method that help prevent scientists from jumping to unsound conclusions? Then you'll also hear from Skylar Weirs, from Dakota Weirs, who will tell you about her unfair situation of dealing with cancer at such a young age. But this does not take away from the fact that Dakota jumped to the conclusion that her cancer was caused by Jufo after watching a news story about a possible link. Dakota Weirs jumped to the conclusion and didn't look at other evidence. You'll also hear from the defense witnesses. First, you'll hear from Blake Doncourt himself, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer. His passion as an environmentalist will shine through. He will tell you that he would never hurt anyone and would, in fact, make sure his product is safe. He is a leader of a company who is responsible for producing vibrant, lush, green grass in a safe manner, of course. Next, you'll hear from Dr. Devin Williams, the brains behind Lush Fertilizer. She will tell you that she is a very educated woman in toxicology with years of experience and the perfect fit for being leader of the toxicology labs at Lush. She will tell you that she follows the evidence to where it leads instead of jumping to conclusions. Then you will also hear from Skylar. who is a Dakota Weir's twin sister. She will tell you all about her research, which took her almost a year. And in that research, she meticulously reviewed all of the evidence. And instead of jumping to the conclusion that must have been more convenient for her family, she actually found that Jufo is not cancerous and actually is a pesticide that helps protect from other pesticides. The plaintiff will try to tell you that that Dakota's cancer is connected to Lush, but you cannot jump to that conclusion because you will quickly see that the plaintiff's whole case is built on possibility, not probability, correlation, not causation. There is no way you'll be able to conclude that Lush is connected to Dakota's cancer. Your Honor, members of the jury, I ask that you don't rush to judgment. Do not jump to a faulty conclusion. Thank you.
Plaintiff, please call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Mr. Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Mr. Weirs, you've previously been sworn. Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Weirs. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Good morning. My name is Dakota Weirs. That's Weirs.
And Mr. Weirs, could you tell us a bit about your background?
Of course. Well, as I said, my name is Dakota. I'm 20 years old. I have a twin sister, and I was recently diagnosed with a cancer known as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And Mr. Weirs, what sort of activities did you do prior to your diagnosis?
I really tried to be as active a member in my community as I could. I really tried to help those people that were not quite as lucky as I was. I worked at a soup kitchen in my neighborhood, and I really just wanted to help out as much as I could. And I worked to earn a little money at Haven Landscaping.
Could you please detail your job for us?
Yes. I mean, I was only 14 when I started my job, and so I wasn't quite old enough or big enough to work any of the heavy machinery. So I was really restricted to just spreading fertilizer, pretty much.
And Mr. Weirs, why were you working?
I was really working to fund my education. That was something that meant a lot to me at the time, and it still does mean a lot to me today.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Now, moving forward a bit, did you think that any of the fertilizers you worked with could have caused your condition?
Yes, there was one fertilizer that stood out to me, Lush fertilizer.
And why was that?
Well, after I was diagnosed, I saw sort of a program on my television, sort of a whistleblower had been exposing documents that showed that Lush fertilizer contained chemicals that linked directly to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I sort of connected the dots.
I see. And Mr. Weirs, did you contact anyone at your old job about this?
Yes, of course. I contacted my old boss, and he confirmed that we had been using Lush fertilizer, and so he found an old package, and he sent me the label.
Mr. Weirs, would you please turn to what has been marked as Exhibit 1?
Yes, of course.
And Mr. Weirs, is this an accurate copy of the exhibit or of the label that your boss sent you?
Yes.
Did you see this label while you were working at Haven?
I did.
And Is this the same label that you saw then?
It is.
Then, Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 is admitted into evidence for all purposes.
Then I would also ask that it be published by screen share.
Yes, please. I can't tell you who is supposed to do the screen sharing, but I don't see it yet.
Oh, okay. It seems like they're having trouble getting it set up.
Is it necessary to have it on the screen for your further questioning?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Let's get it fixed.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. Mr. Weirs, do you see what's currently being screen shared?
Can we rotate that?
I don't know, Ken. Okay, now.
Well, let's go ahead. It's still legible. It just
Yes, I can read it.
okay.
Mr. Weirs, is there a warning label on this?
Barely. It says, warning causes eye irritation. Avoid contact with eyes or something along those lines, which is, well, it's certainly not the cancer that I suffer from today. But it's barely a warning.
And was there anything specifically troubling about this label?
Yes, I mean, it says avoid contact with eyes of clothing, I believe. And I believe that's supposed to say or clothing, which is really concerning to me, at least, because, I mean, the fact that they wouldn't even take the time to reread the warning on a dangerous product containing chemicals is absolutely absurd to me. And they obviously just put no effort into this.
Thank you, timekeeper. You can stop the screen share. Now, Mr. Weirs, transitioning to your personal life, what have been some of the effects that cancer has had on your body?
Well, I mean, it's cancer, so it's greatly affected my life. It has changed everything for me. It has made my future completely unclear. I mean, there's the possibility that I could never recover. There's the possibility I could die. But aside from that, I mean, severe weight loss, my body bruises very easily. The lymph nodes are exponentially larger, and you know, it's hard to breathe at times. And I mean, I can barely move around my house at this point.
And Mr. Weirs, I hate to ask you this, but how much would you have to pay in order for that money to be equivalent to the amount of pain you're experiencing?
I mean, it's a big question. I mean, to me, my life is worth a lot. I would say $500 a day would would at least make it somewhat better. But I mean, there's not really a price you can put on it.
And how many years do you think of your life have been affected by this?
I mean, it's hard to say. I would hope that it has affected at least 60 more years of my life.
I see. Now, Mr. Weirs, earlier you referred to, or you mentioned that you put a lot of importance on your education. Is that still true to you?
Yes, of course it is. I mean, my dream has always been to go to Juilliard. I worked really hard in school to get good grades. I was a member of the National Honor Society. I really tried. I studied. I did extracurriculars. I did my best to get involved in my community, all to try and reach my goal, which was Juilliard. I'm a pianist.
And Mr. Weirs, how has that goal progressed since you started working at Lush or for Haven?
Well, I mean, I got a full scholarship to Juilliard to start it off, but after I was diagnosed and now that I'm in the amount of pain that I am today, I can't even sit at the piano bench. So I can't play piano, and I don't think that I can attend Juilliard. I'm not going to be able to, play, which was why I was going.
And Mr. Weirs, why did you start playing piano in the first place?
It really started with my grandfather. Back when I was much younger, I would play with him. I would sit on his lap, and he was a pianist himself. He was very talented, and we would just play together. When he passed away, piano was sort of a way to reconnect with him. Almost, it was a way that I could just imagine him sitting right next to me and playing alongside me. And when I lost the ability to play, it was like losing him a second time. And it was one of the hardest parts of my illness.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Mr. Weirs. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
Cross-examination,
May I proceed?
you may.
Good morning, Mr. Weirs. First, I would like to talk to you about your old job. You're employed at Haven Landscaping, correct?
Yes.
And you started working here as a 14-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And you really enjoyed working here because you liked working outdoors, didn't you?
Yeah, it was wonderful.
And you love feeling the wind on your bare face, right?
Yes.
You loved the wind against your bare face so much that you never covered your face, did you?
I sometimes would not wear the correct protection. That is correct.
And you did this even though your boss told you to cover your face, right?
Sometimes it was just too hot, and everybody else was not wearing the correct gear as well. So.
But your boss did tell you to do so, correct?
Objection, hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, I will rephrase.
I'm sorry.
I will rephrase the question, Your Honor.
Okay, please do so.
Excuse me?
Please do so.
You were working with chemicals, weren't you?
I was, yes, yeah.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would ask that my timekeeper publish Exhibit 1, which has already been admitted.
Yes. Please screen share Exhibit 1.
This picture was sent by your boss, correct?
Yes, it was.
And it shows the old packaging of the Lush product, right?
It does.
And the label looks just as you remember, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Weirs, excuse me. Under user safety recommendations, it says use of respirator or N95 mask is recommended, correct?
It does recommend that, but it has no indication of the consequences.
And isn't this a recommendation on the label you so clearly remember?
Yes, it is a recommendation, yes.
And you didn't follow this recommendation, correct?
At times, it was simply too hot, but I certainly would have followed the recommendation had I known that it would cause me cancer if I didn't.
But there was times where you didn't follow this recommendation, correct?
So, yes.
Okay. And the label also says, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin, correct?
It does.
Okay. And long sleeves, pants, and gloves were expected to be used as a precaution of dealing with chemicals when using fertilizer, right?
Yes, but once again, if I had known that it would ruin my life completely, I probably would have followed those precautions.
Okay. But you didn't follow this precaution, did you?
I mean, sadly, no.
Okay. Instead, you wore shorts and t-shirts, right?
At times when it was very hot, I did.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Mr. Weirs, Havens also used other fertilizers and chemicals, right?
They did use some others, yes.
And some of these had warnings, right?
Yes, I believe almost all of the ones other than Lush did have warnings.
And these warnings would recommend to use the product outdoors, right?
Yes, oftentimes.
But you often use the product indoors, correct?
I was often told to, but
Is that a yes?
yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Weirs, you also really love music, right?
Yes, it was my passion before it was stolen away from me.
You grew up playing piano, right?
Yeah.
And isn't it correct that you even got a full ride scholarship from Juilliard?
Yes, yeah, it was a dream come true.
Congratulations, Mr. Weirs. But I understand you had to turn down the scholarship for the moment, right?
Sadly, yes, I can't compete in such a high level program.
But you were still able to defer it for 2 years, right?
Yes, thankfully I was, but you know, I don't know if I'm even gonna make it that long.
But your doctor has not given up hope yet, correct?
No, my doctor is not, but yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I perform a brief redirect?
You may.
Mr. Weirs, what was the sense of danger that you felt could happen if you didn't wear protective clothing with Lush fertilizer?
Well, seeing as the warning was very minimal, and the consequences seemed very small. In fact, eye irritation was not something I was very worried about at the time. I mean, I was not worried at all when using the product. Very little.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Thank you, Your Honor. That concludes my redirect.
Thank you. You may step down or go off of the video. Plaintiff, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Ms. Carson-Durst to the stand.
Ms. Durst, you've previously been sworn. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name.
My name is Carson Durst, and that's Durst.
Now, could you start us off by describing your educational background?
Well, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Arizona State University.
Now, Ms. Durst, where do you work?
Currently, I'm the lead product developer and the head of the research and development team at Terrace Greenery, and I oversee the development of their fertilizer and lawn enhancement products.
What was your career like before Terrace Greenery?
Well, I worked at Lush. I was hired as an intern and then was promoted to a full-time position as product development engineer after 3 months with the company.
So then, how were you hired for this position at Lush?
Well, I was given the opportunity by company founder and CEO Blake Doncourt.
Could you elaborate on your relationship with the Doncourts?
Of course, I used to be really close with the Doncourts. They were like a second family to me. I was best friends with Blake and Morgan's oldest son, Charles. We played on the same soccer team and were practically inseparable, but that was a long time ago and we've drifted apart.
Now, so going back to Lush, how long did you work there?
Well, I worked there for 3 years. I started with the company in 2003 and left in 2006.
And what did you do while you were working there?
Well, I was a product development engineer and then was promoted, and I was involved in the in-house studies that Lush did.
Can you describe these in-house studies? Which studies were you involved in?
Well, the first study I was involved in was testing the safety of the bonding agent Drufo. And later that year, they did another study specifically on whether Drufo was carcinogenic. I was part of the team researching both.
Could you elaborate on this first study you mentioned that Lush did on Drufo?
Of course, they conducted an in-house study testing the safety of Drufo, and I was tasked with researching one of the chemical compounds in Drufo.
Did you take part in any other studies with Lush?
Yes, in September of 2003, Lush conducted a second study relating to Drufo, this time studying the carcinogenic nature of Drufo in humans.
How did you get started in this study?
Well, my boss, Jerry Langley, emailed me and my colleagues inviting us to take part in the study.
Did you keep this email?
Yes, I printed it out in September of 2003 and kept it until now.
Let the record reflect that I'm showing Ms. Durst a copy of Exhibit 4. Now, Ms. Durst, do you recognize this document?
Yes, it is the email I received from Jerry and about the study in September 2003.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of that email you received?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, hearsay.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. While this statement may be hearsay, it falls under the exception 801 D2D, an opposing party statement. This statement is offered against an opposing party and was made by the party's agent or employee on a matter within the scope of that relationship and while it existed.
Reply?
Your Honor, this email was sent by someone that is not in this courtroom today, and we cannot confer a cross-examination of this witness. And it is an out-of-court statement that is being used to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
The response to your original objection, I think, essentially admitted that it is, or agreed that it is hearsay, but that the argument is that it's admissible because it's a statement against interest by the opposing party. Would you address that part of this issue, please?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Your Honor?
Yeah, the contention by plaintiff is that this is an exception to the hearsay rule as a statement against interest of opposing party, or even just a statement by opposing party. Can you address that, please?
Your Honor, I stand by my objection.
Objection overruled. Please proceed.
Is the exhibit still admitted into evidence, Your Honor?
Yes, it is.
All right, then I ask that apologies, continue.
Well, Exhibit 4 is admitted for all purposes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I ask that the timekeeper share this exhibit now.
Please do so.
Now, Ms. Durst, what does this email say?
Well, it says that the second study that was being conducted to research potential carcinogenic qualities that were found in Drufo in the June study also states that we as research development engineers should meet with senior management to be briefed on target market positions and economic strategies planned for Drufo.
Now, what did you take this email to mean?
To me, it seemed like we should present our results and analysis in a positive light to promote the financial success of Drufo. This also was made clear in our weekly meetings.
And what did you do with your analysis once you finished this study?
Once we researched our conclusions, we had a final meeting to present our analysis and findings to my boss, Jerry, and an upper echelon manager, Alex Monroe.
Can you describe what happened at this final meeting?
Well, one scientist expressed concerns that not only may Drufo contain a carcinogen, but that our analysis and found that it was perhaps linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Now, how did Alex and Jerry react to this?
Well, at the end, Alex told us to keep it in the walls until we figured out what we were doing.
Were your findings part of that final conclusion for these studies?
Yes, the information I found was included in the findings.
Now, could you describe the perimeters of this research?
Well, like I said, management made sure that we got a conclusion that they wanted to keep the findings open-ended so Lush could interpret it the way they wanted and the way that they needed to keep Drufo in their products.
Now, can you explain the issues you took with how Lush did their research on Drufo?
Yes, I felt that there was a problem with the way that Lush was conducting research, and I voiced my opinions to some of the people higher up in the company, saying that there was research left out and Lush did not include all the data that was found in the studies.
Now, what do you think about the study based on your participation in the research?
Well, I believe that Lush left out data and only included the information that they wanted and needed to keep Drufo in their products, making their studies fake research.
Now, how did the company respond to your thoughts?
Well, after I voiced my concerns about how the studies were being done, the company gave me a performance improvement plan, and I was delegated the jobs no one wanted, so I became less involved with the research Lush was doing.
Now, what was your response to this?
Well, at this point, I felt that my career at Lush was coming to an end, so I started looking for other jobs. Luckily, Terrace Greenery had an opening for product development engineer, and I was hired, but I did feel conflicted taking the job because of my connection with the Dawn courts.
Could you explain a little bit more about the conflict you felt?
Well, yes, due to my extensive history with the Dawn courts, I felt that it was still in my best interest to take the other job, but it could affect Blake personally. But I needed to look out for myself and ended up taking the job.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Ms. Durst, you are best friends with Charles Doncourt, correct?
I used to be, but we're not that close anymore.
this is Blake Doncourt's son.
Yes, it is.
You and Charles attended the same college, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
And you graduated from this college, correct?
Yes, I did.
You weren't on the top of your class, were you?
I was not, but I did pretty well in school.
And after you graduated, you were having difficulties finding a place of work, correct?
Yes, I was.
So you talked about this with your best friend Charles, right?
Well, I talked about everything.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, this is not hearsay, for this is testimony that this witness has testified in her witness statement.
Reply.
Your Honor, this question is asking about the conversation had with someone who is not in court here today. So it is hearsay.
I'm going to, well, technically the question was, did you talk to somebody who was not in the courtroom today? That question, I'm going to overrule the objection. It is not hearsay at this point. The next question may be, and I'll leave that up to you, counsel. But the objection as to this question is overruled. Would you like to ask the question?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please do so.
You talked about the difficulties of finding a job with your best friend Charles, didn't you?
Well, I talked about everything with Charles, and this just happened to be one of the things I said.
And this led to you finding out that Lush Fertilizer was hiring, correct?
Yes, that was very fortunate that that was mentioned.
Miss Durst, positions of chemical engineering are hard to come by, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Especially for new graduates without any experience, right?
Yes.
So seeing this, your best friend was sure that his father could pull some strings for you to get a job at Lush, right?
That is correct.
So that's how you started working at Lush, isn't it?
Well, I applied at Lush like any other person and was hired by the company. So I don't know if Blake was involved with hiring me as an employee.
Ms. Durst, after working at Lush for a while, you quickly passed up more experienced workers, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And this is how you came to be a product development engineer, right?
That is correct.
So as a postgraduate with no experience in this line of work, you were not qualified for your position, were you?
Well, working at the company, I gained experience and was then qualified.
So let's talk about that experience. You were assigned to work on the development of a fertilizer product that contained Drufo, weren't you?
That is correct.
Specifically, you were assigned to research the safety of a chemical compound the chemical compound Drufo, correct?
Yes.
In your research, you only found one study that suggested Drufo may be carcinogenic in rats, correct?
That is correct.
And you found no studies showing that Drufo causes cancer in humans, didn't you?
Well, seeing that study with the rats, it should raise a concern that Drufo could have some negative effects.
Ms. Durst, is that a yes?
That is correct.
But Lush wanted to make sure Drufo was safe. So you were next assigned to work on the more in-depth research to see whether Drufo could actually cause cancer in humans, correct?
Correct.
And after you and your fellow colleagues finished your research, you said that it was incredibly misleading, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And this is due to some of the data being left out of the report, correct?
Yes.
And you said that Lush did its best to hide the fact that Drufo could cause cancer in its non-baked form, didn't you?
Yes, I do believe that is what Lush was trying to do.
And according to you, the research suggested that there might be a component in Drufo that could be connected to cancer, even though it shows that Drufo met government safety standards, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. This is a compound question.
Response?
I could split the question up, Your Honor.
Please do so.
Ms. Durst, Drufo was met government safety standards, correct?
Yes, but I believe that Lush never specified what that government standard is.
But you didn't have access to all of the research data, so your opinion is more or less a guess, isn't it?
Well, being involved with the studies, I feel that I have enough expertise to make my opinion on what research was left out.
So, and despite your concern, you didn't bother to bring this up to anyone, did you?
Well, I did voice my opinion to Blake at one point.
So you voiced your opinion to Blake about some of the data being left out of the research?
No, but I did voice my opinion to Blake about other issues with it.
And it was around this time that you started having job performance problems, isn't it?
That is correct.
In fact, you started being accused of cutting back on your research and just skating along, right?
I can assure you that I was doing all the work that I had to.
Is that a yes?
That is correct.
Even the executive team of Lush confronted you about your poor performance, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
And they even made you sign a performance improvement plan, correct?
Correct.
Putting you on probation.
I do believe that was part of my performance improvement plan.
This is because of your performance reviews being abysmal, weren't they?
Yes, I do believe that.
So when Blake didn't help you with this situation, you decided to look for another job, correct?
Well, yes, I felt my time at Lush was coming to an end, so I started looking around the field.
And you got a job, and you were fired from Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Well, I was planning on quitting and happened to be fired before then.
And you got a job at Terrace Greenery, Lush Fertilizer's biggest component, didn't you?
I felt like I should stay in the field that I know, and Tara's happens to be in that field. So yes, I did apply and eventually get the job there.
And you took this job even though you signed a confidentiality agreement with Lush, didn't you?
Well, I had forgotten about this confidentiality agreement at the time, but yes, I did.
And you knew that Blake had bad blood with Tara's, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you applied to Tara's Greenery out of spite of Blake, didn't you?
I needed to look out for myself. Out of spite for Blake had very little impact on my decision.
So is that a yes or no?
I wouldn't exactly say either.
So is it your testimony here that you did not apply out of spite for Blake?
No, it is not. I did apply out of spite.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Now, Ms. Durst, can you explain why you were moving so quickly in the ranks at Lush?
Well, I was outperforming my employees, and eventually Lush started to notice and promoted me.
So you weren't qualified before. Well, explain your qualifications before you got the job.
Well, I did have a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, so I did have some schooling, and I gained expertise while working at the company.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Plaintiff, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Dr. Casey Rogers,
Could you spell your last name for the record as well?
Rogers.
Good morning, Dr. Rogers. What do you do for a living?
I'm currently employed as a professor in horticulture and entomology at the University of California, Berkeley. As part of my work, I've taught a few courses in horticulture and entomology. I also perform research with the university as part of my employment.
Would you please describe your educational background?
I received a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University. I also have a PhD in entomology from the University of California, Berkeley.
Would you please describe your professional background as well?
Previously, I'd worked as a research analyst for a large multinational chemical company. I've also published many scholarly articles that focus on the toxicity of chemicals, including Drufo.
Could you further describe your research, please?
My research has been used by administrative boards as well as used in other litigation. Also, it is used by advice for chemical companies. I'm currently involved with research at the Environmental Chemistry and Toxicology Laboratory, and through this research, I work with pesticides and ensure their safety on humans and other non-target species.
Could you describe what horticulture is?
Well, in simple terms, horticulture is the study and the cultivation of plants.
And would you describe what toxicology is?
Toxicology is the study of adverse effects on chemical substances. It is also the practice of diagnosing and treating exposure to toxins and toxicants.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff moves to offer Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in horticulture, toxicology, and research analysis.
Horticulture, toxicology, and research analysis.
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
This witness is deemed qualified in the fields of horticulture, toxicology, and research analysis, and may testify through opinion evidence pursuant to Rule 702.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, what was your first impression of Drufo?
Well, due to the lack of sufficient studies on the effects of Drufo, I initially felt as though there was a need to look further into Drufo and its effects on humans. Because I felt that Drufo was rushed to the market, I felt that Drufo was actively putting people in danger. I'd also read a study that stated that Drufo was carcinogenic in rats, and those three factors gave me reason to further investigate the effects of Drufo on humans.
So what did you do to form your opinion on Drufo?
I have conducted extensive research on the effects of Drufo. Notably, I've recently published a study that examined those effects of Drufo on humans.
How was that study conducted?
This study was conducted over numerous years and included 3 groups of people. The first group was a control group, the second was a group with minimal exposure to Drufo, and the third group was a group with high exposure to Drufo. I monitored the health conditions developed in these groups and then compared that back to the control group.
Could you further elaborate on those groups?
Well, the people in these groups were from all walks of life, and the common thread between these people in the high and minimal exposure groups was that they were exposed to Drufo. To make the study more accurate, the control group consisted of people that were not exposed to Drufo.
What did your study conclude?
Unsurprisingly, this study concluded that Drufo in many cases led to cancer. In fact, in the group of people with prolonged exposure, the participants were 10 times as likely to develop cancer, and in the group with minimal exposure, the participants were twice as likely to develop cancer. These numbers are statistically significant enough that their existence cannot be coincidence, and this would all lead me to believe that there's a correlation between Drufo and serious disease.
Was one of these serious diseases non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes.
Now, Dr. Rogers, why do you think Drufo could cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Objection, Your Honor, improper expert testimony.
Response?
Is this objection to this current question or the previous question?
Well, I'll let counsel answer, but I think it was the last question that you asked. I assume if that's not true, you may correct me, counsel.
Yes, it is, Your Honor. Yes, it is, Your Honor.
This objection is to the question about why it would cause cancer?
Yes.
Please respond to that.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers has been qualified in the field of toxicology. Toxicology has been clarified as a field of chemistry which deals with the adverse effects of toxicants on the body. If my witness is able to respond, he will respond from a toxicological standpoint, describing the process by which chemicals can cause serious medical conditions, but not offering any medical expertise such as a diagnosis or any treatment plan.
Response?
Your Honor, Dr. Rogers was entered as an expert in toxicology. However, he was not entered as a medical expert. Therefore, these questions that require medical expertise, specifically oncology, fall out of his expertise.
Objection is overruled. I think this is fairly within the field of toxicology. The question is. So the objection is overruled. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question, Dr. Rogers?
Yes, please.
Why do you think that Drufo could cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Well, outside particles from Drufo could have been absorbed by Mr. Weir's skin and collected in the lymph nodes. The concentration of the particles in the cells could have overwhelmed the lymph nodes' ability to fight infection and disease, and this, again, can result in the formation of cancer.
Now, Dr. Rogers, what did your research say about protective gear?
Well, although it is true that wearing protective gear decreases the risk of exposure, it is not customary for protective gear to be provided to workers, and as a result of this, most people do not wear protective gear.
Now, Dr. Rogers, how did you prepare for this case?
Well, I've extensively reviewed the medical records of Mr. Weir's in preparation for this case.
And what did those records tell you?
I learned from these records that Mr. Weir's worked in an atmosphere that would fall under the high exposure category, meaning that he was 10 times more likely to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma. I also learned that he was not given access to adequate protective gear and that he now has non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
What conclusion would this all lead you to?
Due to Mr. Weir's similarity to the high exposure group and my research indicating that exposure to Drufo increases the chances of serious disease, I believe that there is a high degree of probability that Drufo caused Mr. Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination, please.
Hello, Dr. Rogers.
Hello.
You were hired to testify. You were hired to testify for plaintiff, correct?
That's correct.
It is also true that this is your first time testifying as an expert witness in court, right?
That's correct. Every expert witness has to start somewhere.
You do not have any medical expertise, do you?
No, however, I do have a lot of expertise in toxicology.
You conducted your own study on Drufo, correct?
Yes, the study was very extensive.
And this study solely focused on the chemical Drufo, correct?
That is correct, although we also examined the participants and made sure that they, or examined the conditions that they developed.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
You say that Drufo is known to be carcinogenic in rats, correct?
Yes.
You have not seen any scientific evidence other than your own study suggesting that Drufo is carcinogenic in humans, correct?
Well, you know, because my study was just recently released, it's very possible that people are conducting studies very similar to mine as we speak.
But it is not an established fact that Drufo is carcinogenic in humans, correct?
Well, again, my study did find that participants were 10 times as likely to develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma if they were in the high exposure category, which Mr. Weir's was.
Okay. Your study was aimed to further investigate the idea of Drufo being carcinogenic for humans, correct?
That, as well as trying to find out if it led to the formation of serious disease.
Is that a yes?
Well, I'd say that was one of the focuses, but not the main one.
Your study had 3 groups, correct?
Sorry, will you repeat the question?
Your study had 3 groups, correct?
Yes.
The control group was with individuals who have never been exposed to Drufo, right?
Yes.
The other group pertained to individuals who were occasionally exposed to Drufo, like gardeners, right?
That's correct.
Another group was with individuals who are exposed to Drufo on a regular basis. Is this correct?
Yes, and that would be Mr. Weir's case.
This study was conducted over a few years, yes?
Yes, it was conducted over numerous years.
And when you monitored the health effects, you concluded that there was a correlation between individuals who are exposed to Drufo and an increased risk of cancer, right?
Yes.
You didn't rule out other environmental factors that might have contributed to the increased risk of cancer, did you?
No, but again, because the participants in these groups were from all walks of life, it leads me to believe that because Drufo was the only linking factor, that Drufo was the cause of their disease.
There are other environmental variables that might similarly impact both gardeners and outside laborers, right?
I mean, I guess you could say it's possible, but I'd say it's very, very unlikely.
Both gardeners and farm workers spend significant amounts of time outside, correct?
Yes.
And they likely have greater exposure to the sun, say, than people who work in an office, correct?
Yes.
And correlation is not the same thing as causation, is it?
No, but again, there is serious evidence that exposure to Drufo leads to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
You concluded that those who were exposed to Drufo came into contact with the chemical by primarily breathing the substance in, correct?
Yes, or contact with the skin.
After your study was complete, you made recommendations to reduce the exposure to Drufo, right?
Yes.
Which focus on individuals using proper protective equipment, correct?
Yes, although it's important to note that people in Mr. Weir's case worked a very labor-intensive job, and it's not always realistic to wear that protective gear.
It is your understanding that Weir's was exposed to Drufo without wearing proper protective gear, correct?
Yes, although as I stated, he worked a very laborious job.
Weir's was exposed to several different chemicals regularly for 4 consecutive years, right?
Yes, that's correct.
You said there was a high degree of probability that Weir's medical condition comes as a result of being exposed to Drufo, correct?
Yes.
But you don't know whether the cancer was caused by Drufo or one of the other chemicals that Weir's used, do you?
Well, again, my study concluded that people in the high exposure category, which Mr. Weir's was, were 10 times more likely to develop cancer, which again, that's a high degree of medical probability.
But it is not known for certain, correct?
I mean, yes, that's correct. There could be any other factor, but it's highly unlikely.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. No further questions for this witness.
Any redirect?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Dr. Rogers, why did you choose the people that you did in your study, the groups?
Well, I chose them because they were from all walks of life. And I thought that this would give me more conclusive results because the only common factor between these people was that they were exposed to Drufo.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. You may go dark. Does plaintiff have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor. Plaintiff has no further witnesses.
Plaintiff rest.
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff rests.
Okay, thank you. Defense, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls our first witness, Blake Doncourt, to the stand.
Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Doncourt. Please state and spell your name for the jury.
Blake Duncourt, BLAKEDONCOURTT.
Mr. Doncourt, what do you do for a living?
I'm CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
What does Lush Fertilizer do?
We make an assortment of fertilizing products.
What is your flagship? Oh, I'm sorry. What is your flagship product?
It's Lush Fertilizer.
How is Lush Fertilizer used?
It's used by a various amount of people. Ranges from small businesses to big governments that trust us.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Let me. We're getting an echo. Can everybody please check your mute buttons to make sure you're on mute? I think particularly in the same room where the witness is, it may be the source of it. Be sure to mute and see if we can get rid of the echo. Okay, please proceed. I'm sorry for the interruption.
No worries, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, I would now like to discuss how you develop your products. How do you move a product through the development process?
Well, we go through extensive research for our research and toxicology department. And also the EPA takes a look at what we do.
Measures ensure.
Can you repeat that?
What do these measures ensure?
These measures ensured a multitude of things that we didn't find any toxicity, hazards of the sort, nothing harmful to our users.
Mr. Doncourt, you previously mentioned the EPA. What does the EPA look for?
They look for anything hazardous, toxic, and if they find so, they will immediately tell us to remove the product.
Did Lush Fertilizer go through each of these stages?
Yes, we did extensively.
What is the most prominent chemical in the product?
That would be Drufo.
Do you believe Drufo is dangerous?
After all the research and the EPA not coming with anything conclusive, I would say not.
What did the research find about Drufo?
Well, we did extensive research, and we didn't find anything conclusive, neither did the EPA.
Did the EPA find any toxicity in the fertilizer?
Just little minute hazards that didn't mean much.
Did your company put a warning label on the product?
Yes, we did to ensure user safety, but under federal law, we didn't require one, but we still put one.
Is there anything you could do to guarantee that your fertilizer would not be carcinogenic?
Yes, that would be to bake the fertilizer.
Did your company bake the fertilizer?
No, we did not. The risks were too small and it was too cost effective. So it was just a business decision and the right decision to take off baking Drufo because there was no great hazard involved.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. Now I'd like to talk about a former employee of yours. Are you familiar with the former employee of yours, Carson Durst?
Yes, I am.
What department did Ms. Durst work under during their time at Lush?
Ms. Durst was intern in the research and development.
What were some of Ms. Durst's responsibilities?
Well, we had Durst conducting their own experiments and putting everything down in their journal.
Do you know where Ms. Durst saw employment after their time at Lush?
At our biggest competitor, in fact, Terrace Greenery.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, let's discuss the reason why we are all here today. What do you know about the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs?
A young, intelligent person who's infected with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What is your understanding of Dakota Weirs' non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
My understanding is it's not a genetic disease, and
Objection.
it
Improper
has
lay
to be.
testimony.
I'm sorry, what was the objection?
Improper lay testimony.
Response?
Your Honor, Mr. Doncourt has personal knowledge on non-Hodgkin lymphoma as the product went through the various stages of review, determining whether or not it was carcinogenic.
Reply?
Your Honor, simply because Mr. Doncourt maybe oversaw and maybe even participated in some of the experiments with carcinogens does not mean he has a full understanding of what non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is and what its effects might be. And therefore it is outside the scope of his witness testimony.
I'm going to sustain the question as asked. I think it does call for an opinion with insufficient foundation from this witness's background. So I'm going to sustain it, but allow counsel to rephrase the question if you wish, so that it does not is not contrary to the objectionable aspect of it. So you may proceed, counsel. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, what is your understanding of your product's carcinogenicity?
Well, my product is, to me, and what we've researched, safe.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. Your Honor, no further questions for this witness.
Cross-examination,
Yes, Your Honor.
please proceed.
Mr. Doncourt, throughout your direct testimony, you use the term valid studies.
Yes.
A valid study, or the term valid studies could be applied to the research which your team conducted.
Can you elaborate on that question?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're just kind of confusing me. Sorry.
No problem. You would say that the research your company conducted on Drufo was a valid study.
Yes.
You would also say that the study apparently by the EPA was also valid.
The EPA is run by the government, so I would consider that valid.
Both of these studies concluded that you did not require a warning for carcinogenic materials.
Under federal law, no, I did not.
And so you didn't put a warning for carcinogenic materials.
That's because the EPA and my research department didn't find anything conclusive, and we didn't even need one for a label to be required. So we decided to put a label, but we didn't need one for carcinogenity.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, I think you mentioned this already, but one of the reasons why you didn't include a label was because there were no conclusive studies that pointed to a connection between Drufo and cancer.
So what was your question?
One of the reasons why you didn't put a warning label for carcinogens is because there was no concerns or studies which brought up concerns about the connection between cancer and Drufo.
Yes, no conclusive studies.
You are aware of Dr. Rogers' study.
As to recent, yes.
And you do not believe Dr. Rogers' study is a valid study.
No, and I was made aware until this court. So even if that was the case, it'd still be a little wonky.
Mm-hmm. And you know that Dr. Rogers' study raises concerns about Drufo and cancer.
Yes, as Teresa, I am aware.
You are not tendered as an expert in this case.
Can you repeat that question real quick?
You are not tendered as an expert in this case.
No, I'm not an expert. I just, I wouldn't consider myself an expert.
You do not claim to have any education on scientific research.
No, I do not claim that. That's why I have a research department.
Mr. Doncourt, earlier in your direct, you said that while the toxicity of your product was below federal level, there was still hazards in your product.
Yes, it's fertilizer, so there is going to be hazards. That doesn't mean they're going to be carcinogenic hazards. They're just going to be hazards within fertilizer, which is dirt. So dirt has hazards, obviously.
And Mr. Weirs, you could have gotten rid of these hazards completely.
Yes, it's minute hazards, though. The percentage was so small, and basically it's just safe. So there's really no need to bake something. It would just be overkill.
Mr. Doncourt, a yes or no answer will suffice.
So I guess yes.
But you do not bake your products. You do not claim to bake any of your products.
No, I do not bake any of my products.
Because baking is costly.
That's what I said before. It is costly and it's such a minute hazard. We don't need to bake the product.
Mr. Dunkert, would you please look at what has been marked as Exhibit 8?
Yes.
Okay. You made a chart to show how costly baking would be.
Can you pull up Exhibit 8? It's not showing up right now.
I believe pretrial matters said that, Your Honor, you didn't want us to screen share until after we put it into evidence, but is it okay if I screen share just for Mr. Doncourt to see it?
Well, let me ask the witness, do you have access to a copy of Exhibit A from where you are right now without screen share?
Yeah, I don't have the copies right here with me.
Okay, go ahead and screen share for this purpose, recognizing that the exhibit has not yet and may not be admitted.
Mr.
Please proceed.
Do you see the screen share?
Yes, I see it. Thank you.
In 2004, or sorry, is this an accurate copy of the chart you made in 2004?
Yes, this is.
Then, Your Honor, I move to admit this into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit A is admitted for all purposes, and I will deem this screen share to be publishing to the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Dunkert, in 2004, you would have made $1.6 million in profit.
Yes.
Baking would have cost $250,000.
That's correct.
In 2014, you would have lost $2.6 million because of baking.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Thank you, timekeeper. You can stop the screen share. Mr. Doncourt. Sorry, give me a second.
No, it's fine. Take your time.
Lush has become one of the leading companies globally for producing fertilizer.
Yeah, through our hard work and eco-friendly tasks we do at Lush, we have become one of the leading fertilizers.
And that success has allowed you to donate 10% of your profits to charity.
That's correct.
But you do not bake any, you do not spend the money to bake your products.
No, we do not.
You need that money to give to your investors.
Yes, I do need to pay my investors back.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions for this witness at this time.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Mr. Doncourt, the plaintiff's attorney was asking you about the amortization table. Tell me, what is the purpose of a table like that?
It's to see our cost and profit and to see what we could take action on.
If you knew that your fertilizer was linked to cancer, would that change your decision on whether or not to bake the fertilizer?
Yes, absolutely. That would change my decision. If I knew it was a leading cause of cancer, I would spend no expense to remove that hazard for a multitude of reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. Your Honor, no further questions for this witness.
All right, thank you. Defense, please call your next witness.
The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
Dr. Williams has been famously sworn.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Good morning, my name is Devin Williams.
Williams, I am first going to ask you about your expertise. What is your role with respect to this case?
I am head of toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer, and I'm part of the outgoing chair of the companies at the committee.
What is your educational background?
I obtained my undergrad and my doctorate at Colorado State University in Fort Collins at the College of Pharmacy and Allied Health Professions.
Did you get any postgraduate degrees?
Yes, I did a specialized post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
What did your education lead to?
I now hold many certificates in toxicology in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah.
Please describe your professional career.
I have been a toxicologist since 1993 and was medical chief examiner for 2 years.
What did you do in that role?
I would use forensic toxicological techniques to analyze human samples collected at autopsy.
And what was the purpose of performing these tests?
I could determine how toxic chemicals like drugs can cause death.
What did you do after you're the chief medical examiner?
I was an assistant professor at the University of Colorado at Antioch Medical School. And in 2003, I left to teach at CSU at the College of Pharmacy and Allied Professions as an associate professor in toxicology. I've been working since.
And what courses do you teach here?
I teach forensic toxicology 1 and 2, the principles of forensic toxicology, and a class called toxicology of mind to aware occupation. Yeah.
And do you do any research as part of your work as a professor?
Yes, I'm a research toxicologist since I'm a research toxicologist by training and work to understand how biological systems respond to environmental toxins.
Jury, what this means?
I look at the effects substance has on the human body, such as how alcohol affects inhibitions in neurochemical pathways and how alcohol affects in inorganic compounds in agriculture and enhancing organ phosphorus products.
Do you do anything in addition to teaching?
Yes, I work at Lush Fertilizer.
And what has your work experience as a toxicologist taught you?
I can look at the effects substance may have on the human body. And through my training experience, I understand how to evaluate test results and determine the potential effects it has on the human body and how to neutralize substance like chemical agents.
in. Thank you. At this time, Your Honor, I would move to admit Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in toxicology.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
This witness
Can you tell me?
is deemed qualified as an expert in toxicology and may testify through opinion evidence pursuant to Rule 702.
Thank
Please
you.
proceed.
Can you tell me more about when you joined Lush?
When I joined Lush, I was a technician, but later on got promoted to lead the labs.
As leader of labs.
Can you repeat that question?
What was your job as a leader of these labs?
My job at this point was to oversee how Lush products are environmental aware and how Lush products can stay industry leading environmental. Wait, sorry, let me rephrase that. My job at this point was to oversee how Lush products are environmental impactful and how Lush products can stay industry leading, environmental aware, and cost effective.
And how does fertilizer impact the environment?
Fertilizer causes something called eutrophication. Eutrophication is the buildup of nutrients in bodies of water caused by nitrate. It kills fish and is harmful for humans.
How does eutrophication happen?
Objection,
The
Your
use
Honor.
of
I'm sorry, what was the objection?
Outside scope of expert testimony.
Response?
Ms. Williams is qualified to talk about this because eutrophication is talking about the method that organisms are exposed to these toxins, and since she is an expert in toxicology, it includes toxins.
Response. Your
Reply.
Honor, eutrophication is the accumulation of excess nutrients in bodies of water. It's a biological concept, not a chemical one. And since Dr. Williams has only been qualified as a toxicologist, she cannot give testimony to this.
Objection is overruled. I think this is close enough or connected enough with the field of toxicology that I will allow the question. So the objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So how does eutrophication happen?
Okay, so the unused fertilizer converts into nitrate from soil bacteria. Then those nitrates are carried into streams of water by nutrients.
And how does Drufo combat eutrophication?
Lush developed Drufo as a new generation of fertilizer. Less fertilizer is needed because Drufo binds the fertilizer to the grass and results less fertilizer washes away into the soil.
And Ms. Williams, is Drufo banned anywhere?
Yes, it is banned in the European Union because it still contains nitrogen, but in labs it looks like it adds to nitrogen pollution when it really doesn't.
And in your expert opinion, should Drufo be banned?
In my expert opinion, I think Drufo should not be banned because the ban was not due to any cancer risk.
And can you tell me more about Drufo not being connected to cancer risks?
Of course, the use of Drufo has not been correlated with any statistical significant increase in the incidence of non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And what method do you use for your statistical analysis?
To take the statistical approach is to, excuse me, sorry. Can you repeat the question again?
What method do you use for your statistical analysis?
Okay. The right statistical approach is to look at the incidence rate of non-Hodgkin lymphoma in groups of people who use fertilizers with Drufo and look at the incidence rate of people who use different products. Random elements not connected to the fertilizer could have caused non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And have you reviewed the research conducted by Dr. Rogers relating to Drufo and cancer?
Yes, I have. I don't think Dr. Rogers' results are reliable.
Why not?
Well, Dr. Rogers didn't use the proper method when conducting the study. You had to compare apples to apples to casual gardeners who use products containing Drufo to casual gardeners who use products
Objection,
who
Your
use
Honor.
different products.
Outside expert.
Response?
Your Honor, Dr. Rogers' study was connected to toxicology, and Ms. Spears has expertise in this and can give her opinion on the investigation.
Response, Your Honor.
You may.
While it is true that Dr. Williams is qualified in toxicology, she is not giving an opinion based in toxicology. She is discussing a toxicological study, but through the lens of research analysis, which she has not been tendered in.
Objection is overruled. Please proceed.
Why do you think that Dr. Rogers' studies are unreliable?
Well, Dr. Rogers compared farm laborers to farm laborers who use products with Drufo to casual gardeners who use products containing Drufo, and to people who don't do any work with plants. But there isn't just difference in the different fertilizers we use. They have totally different lifestyles and are exposed to different things. So the different results in the difference can explain the different cancer rates.
Thank you. Do you have any other concerns with Dr. Rogers' study?
Yes, Dr. Rogers' study has not been peer-reviewed or replicated. Without peer review, it is hard to tell if a substance is going to be harmful. Let me fix that. Yes, Dr. Rogers' study has not been peer-reviewed. Without peer-reviewed, it is hard to tell if he used the proper methods when conducting the study. And without replication, the study is going to just been a fluke.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Dr. Williams, you work for Lush Fertilizer, don't you?
Yes.
And you've worked there for about 10 years now.
Yeah,
That's a pretty long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
You lead the Toxicology Research and Development Lab?
Yes.
That's a top-tier position, isn't it?
It is.
So at Lush, you are in a position of leadership.
I am.
And you've been in that position for 7 years.
Roughly around 7 years.
You're comfortable at Lush?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to work anywhere else?
Not at the moment, but I am working at CSU right now.
You favor Lush over Mr. Weirs, don't you?
I think Lush is trying to do the right thing, and I stand by doing the right thing right now.
But in your witness statement, you mentioned that you also have a financial bias in this case.
I guess if you put into those words, maybe.
And you agree that a bias means a prejudice for one thing over another?
Can you repeat that again?
You agree that a bias means a prejudice for one thing over another?
Sure.
And Mr. Weirs isn't hiring you to be his witness, is he?
Well, I work for Mr. Weirs, so I guess he would be hiring me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Weirs as in Dakota Weirs, the plaintiff?
Oh. Wait, can you rephrase that question really quick?
Mr. Weirs, you are not hired as a witness for Mr. Weirs, the plaintiff, are you?
Oh, no.
Let's talk about Drufo for a moment. You believe that Drufo is revolutionary, don't you?
Yes.
It minimizes unused chemicals.
Yeah, I guess so.
And this in turn decreases runoff.
you repeat that again?
This in turn decreases runoff.
Yeah.
And it needs to be applied less frequently.
Yes.
All of this makes it better for the planet, right?
That would be correct.
So DRUFO is what makes luscious fertilizer better for the planet.
Yeah.
Now, DRUFO is banned in the European Union, isn't it?
Yes. But because they still contain nitrogen.
Yes. And Lush could have fought this European Union decision, couldn't they?
Well, when we wanted to fight the European Union, but we were still starting, so it was kind of hard for us. We had very limited resources to fight.
So you didn't.
And I am writing a study. I'm writing a study to fight the European Union decision.
Yes. But it was just easier to manufacture a line of products without DRUFO for sale in countries that prohibited it, wasn't it?
Well, at the time we were a small company, so yeah.
That's not very ecological, is it?
No, but as I said, I'm still writing a study so we can push that ban and use contribute products with DRUFO to the European Union.
Yeah, let's talk about that study for a second. You are conducting this study, right?
Yeah.
And you anticipate that your findings will lead to a reconsideration of EU approval, don't you?
Yes.
But this lawsuit could change that.
Maybe, but I believe that my study would be very good too.
But if this court were to rule in Mr. Weir's favor, it would create a whole host of bureaucratic roadblocks for the reversal of this ban, as you state in your witness statement, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense, please call your next witness.
The defense calls Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Mr. Weirs, you've been previously sworn. Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Weirs. May you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Skylar Weirs.
Weirs, what is your relation with the plaintiff Dakota Weirs?
Dakota is my fraternal twin.
Mr. Weirs, what is your occupation?
I'm an investigative journalist for a magazine.
What type of magazine?
A science education magazine. I write for the
As an investigative journalist, what kind of research do you do?
Well, recently I've done extensive research on the conflict between individual health and corporate policy.
And have you done any other work related to this topic?
Yeah, I've written several prompt articles on this subject.
What type of articles?
Can you repeat that?
What kind of articles did you write?
Well, I wrote that there was a narrative, that there's a causal link between DRUFO and.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. I would like to ask you about your experience in this field. Can you tell me how you came to be knowledgeable about agricultural chemicals like DRUFO?
Well, my editor assigned me to write a series of articles on agricultural technology, including things like DRUFO.
And can you tell the jury what you mean when you say agritech?
Of course, agritech is short for agricultural technology, which is things like pesticides, fertilizers, genetically modified organisms, also known as GMO.
So what kind of research did you do in preparation for writing those articles?
I spent about a year researching.
And what exactly did you research?
Well, first I went to the agricultural companies themselves and I saw what they put out.
And did you stop there?
No, I did not. I also saw the research studies that were referenced in those publications and tracked them down.
Ms. Weirs, were there any other resources you researched?
Yes. Lastly, I researched the NASDA and the USDA.
Ms. Weirs, how else are you knowledgeable about agritech?
Well, my knowledge base is general, statistical, and historical. And I also stay up to date with current issues of agricultural technology that is released.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense offers Skylar Weirs as an expert witness regarding modern agritech. The defense has now complied with the court's pretrial ruling and offered into evidence sufficient facts to establish her qualifications as an expert witness.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor, if I may perform a brief voir dire.
You may.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Ms. Weirs, you chose to forego college.
Can you repeat that?
Of course. Ms. Weirs, you chose to forego college.
Sorry, I can't really hear you. Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, you chose to forego college.
Yes.
In fact, you have no knowledge working with agritech specifically.
No, but I did do my research on it heavily for around a year.
You have no skill working with agritech.
No, I do not, but I do know that I did extensive research.
You have no experience working with agritech.
No, I do not.
You have no training working with agritech.
No, I do not.
And you have no education working with agritech.
No.
In fact, you don't specify how many articles you read on agritech.
No, but I do know that I read extensively.
Nor do you clarify how many agritech companies you researched.
No.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, Ms. Weirs doesn't qualify as an expert on the basis that she has no knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education in the fields of agritech. Also, pursuant to the pretrial ruling, the defense has failed to prove that Skylar Weirs spent extensive time researching agritech companies by reviewing publications.
Response?
Your Honor, under the pretrial ruling, it states by offer of proof, the defendant asserts and it can show that Skylar Weirs spent considerable time researching agritech companies by reviewing publications written by those companies, research studies referenced in those publications, and information maintained by the USDA and the NASDA. If such facts are confirmed at trial, they are sufficient to establish the witness has specialized knowledge beyond that held by the average juror, and the witness will be allowed to provide testimony under Rule 702 regarding agritech.
Reply?
No, Your Honor, I stand by my previous objection.
Okay, the objection is overruled. The court has already effectively determined this issue through the pretrial ruling, and the standards set in that ruling have been met by this witness's testimony. Counsel, if you wish to cross-examine on this witness's qualifications beyond those, you're free to do so. But this witness is deemed to be an expert and may testify pursuant to Rule 702 through opinions in the field of modern agricultural technology, also known as agritech. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, have you heard of DRUFO?
Yep.
And is DRUFO an example of modern agritech?
Of course it is.
Objection, Your Honor. This is a leading question.
Response?
I can move on, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Ms. Weirs, can you tell us exactly what Drufo is?
Yes, Drufo is an incredibly effective bonding agent, which just means that fertilizers, when plants are treated, they just need less fertilizers.
And how does Drufo work?
Well, Drufo bonds to an active plant and the chemicals inside the fertilizer and just make sure it's not washed away. So basically that means that the fertilizer only needs to be applied once or twice a year instead of 5 to 6 times as others.
And does it do anything else?
Yes, it also is incredibly effective pesticide, which just means it doesn't like contain any of the, cancerous pesticides that are in others.
What kind of cancerous pesticides are those?
Arsenic, which is likely to cause cancer in humans, and glyphosate, which is also.
Ms. Weirs, in your research, did you see any evidence of Drufo containing these cancerous pesticides?
No, my research is inconclusive. It's inconclusive at best. I haven't found any research studies or articles saying that Drufo can cause cancer or not. So I'm but because it does not contain any of the carcinogens that are cancerous. It protects its users actually instead of harming them.
Finally, Ms. Weirs, why are you testifying for the defense side instead of your siblings?
I feel terrible about what happened to Dakota, but if he wore the proper gear, well, if Haven Landscaping required the proper gear, this wouldn't have been an issue that we would be seeing right now.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Weirs, you have spent around a year. Sorry, it echoed for a second there. Ms. Weirs, you have spent around a year studying agritech for your articles.
Yes, I did.
And one of your articles was about Drufo.
Yes, one of my articles was about Drufo because I was researching agrotech.
It was regarding a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Your article, and there is no discussion of the contents of this article besides the initial mentioning of it.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Of course. There is no discussion of the contents of the article you wrote besides the initial mentioning of it.
Yes.
But you don't actually say how much time you spent studying Drufo.
No, I did not, but like as I said, I spent, around a year.
You spent around a year studying agritech, not Drufo.
Yes, because I was also studying, other things like agrotech, which includes other fertilizers that are also like Drufo.
And the bulk of your research came from the USDA, the NASDA, and other articles.
Yes.
However, you never mentioned who wrote those articles.
No, I did not write those articles.
You don't mention the date of publication for these articles.
No, I did not.
You don't mention how many articles.
No, I do not.
In fact, you never even mentioned the contents of those articles.
No.
You say your knowledge base consists of general knowledge along with historical and statistical information.
Yes, I do.
Now, let's go back to your research on Drufo. During your research, you studied what it does.
Oh, yes.
How it works,
Mm-hmm. Of course.
In fact, you actually mentioned what lush is made of.
Yes.
One of these ingredients is nitrogen.
Yes, one of the ingredients is nitrogen.
However, nitrogen is carcinogenic.
Yes.
While you argue Drufo reduces nitrogen, there is still an obvious risk.
Well, anything will still have an obvious risk, you know, if it still contains nitrogen, but it does not contain as much nitrogen as other fertilizers.
Yet this risk still exists.
Well, if there's anything in it, yes.
You even say in your witness statement, there is at least some level of risk with modern agricultural products.
Yes, there is some level of risk to any product, you know, but it's better than the other fertilizers that I've seen out. It might still have some dangers, but it's not as risky as others.
You mentioned no chemical fertilizer is truly safe.
Of course, nothing can be safe if it's a chemical.
So there is a risk that Drufo is carcinogenic.
Yes, a risk, but very slim.
In fact, you never explicitly deny that Drufo causes cancer.
Yes, the research is inconclusive. If it can cause cancer or not.
In your direct testimony, you mentioned you didn't find any articles disproving that Drufo was carcinogenic.
No, I did not.
You only say that you aren't aware of any study that links Drufo to cancer.
Yeah, I'm not aware because from like I said previously, the extensive research, I couldn't find any articles or research studies that said it did.
Now moving on, within your witness statement, you claim Lush is a target of mass hysteria attacks from competing brands.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
However, you never mention any specific attacks on Lush.
Can you repeat that?
Of course, you never mention any specific attacks on Lush.
No.
Instead, you compare it to a previous scenario involving GMOs.
Yes, I did.
GMOs which have nothing to do with Drufo, which is a bonding agent.
Yes.
So you go on about PR campaigns against everything except Lush and Drufo.
Somewhat.
Now, moving on to the Haven landscaping. Your twin worked at Haven without you, correct?
Yes, he did work at Haven without me because sadly, I have a grass allergy, so I couldn't really work there.
So you have no ideas about the means of the training that Dakota went through.
Yeah, I do not know what she was doing, but I do know she was exposed to multiple fertilizers.
You have no firsthand knowledge of the other fertilizers used by Haven.
I do not have firsthand knowledge, but I have heard from studies.
Meaning you have no clue on whether or not the other fertilizers used by Haven could be carcinogenic.
Can you reword that?
Of course, you have no knowledge on whether or not.
Stop.
Okay, you have run out of time on this phase. Does the defense have any further witnesses?
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Plaintiff, are you ready to present your closing argument? You're on mute.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the case in front of you is not one to deliberate on. It is a clear-cut showing of greed on Lush's part and the willingness to put capital over compassion. From the shoddy, forced experiments to the refusal to bake products, to even doing something as putting a simple warning label on the product, Lush has failed over and over again, all for the sake of protecting the name of Drufo and maximizing profits. As the party with the burden of proof, the plaintiff was tasked with proving 4 elements of negligence. There was a duty, there was a breach of that duty, there were damages, and the breach of that duty caused the damages. Time and time again, we have highlighted the clear breaches of the duty assigned to Lush when putting out their product. First, the studies done by Casey Rogers shows a clear causal link between Drufo and cancer. Through these rigorous studies, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Rogers' expert testimony creates an undeniable connection about how carcinogenic Drufo is, and especially its connections to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Through this study, he testifies that those exposed to Drufo are 10 times more likely to develop cancer than those who aren't. Dr. Rogers did by himself what the entire Lush research team couldn't, if you could even call them that. Carson Durst's testimony illustrated not only the toxic environment at Lush, but the corrupt nature of the Drufo development team, consisting of nothing but a forced agenda. Through her time working there and being tasked directly with testing the carcinogenicity of Drufo, she clearly shows that despite her findings, the research team tried to fit the circle through the square hole, making conclusions out of nothing, doing whatever they could to preserve the name of Drufo, going as far to ignore important data that would put others at risk. Blake Doncourt saw Drufo as the goose that laid the golden egg, and he decided to protect his sweet profits at any cost, even at the cost of other people's health. Dakota was a victim to the greed of Lush, having his whole life torn away from him by the novel bonding agent known as Drufo. Everything was snatched away from him: Juilliard, the piano, even comfortably walking around his own house, ripped from him because of one company's inexcusable negligence. Not only was there a clear duty for Lush to warn about the carcinogenic nature of Drufo, there was an egregious violation of that duty for the sake of extra dollars. Even on the product itself, Lush's carelessness is spotlighted through the misspelling of the warning label, showing the utter disregard for user safety. This whole situation is magnified by the money-hungry nature of Blake. Knowing that there was a potential risk behind Drufo, he refused to spend the extra money required to bake the product, instead diverting money to the donations to protect the name of Lush rather than the customers of Lush. This was also to ensure that his investors were pleased, as they were dependent on him. His duty to warn, paired with the breach, utter disregard for his duty, illustrates that Lush was motivated by profits and nothing else. Cutting corners, giving weak, hypocritical opinions regarding the study of the plaintiff's expert, while ignoring the several and severe flaws in theirs, all create a recipe for disaster. Even in the selection of experts, Lush did the bare minimum. First, in introducing Skylar Weirs, whose so-called expert qualifications could easily be replicated by just about anyone who knows how to use the internet. And her lack of skill, expertise, or education shines right through. From unnamed publications to the unspecified amount of time she spent researching Drufo, and worst of all, no actual evidence to disprove the carcinogenicity of Drufo in the slightest. Weirs is the farthest from a credible witness. And finally, Devin Williams, whose studies revolve around guesswork and maybes. To address the elephant in the room, the obvious incentive to support Lush creates a gaping hole in the credibility of Dr. Devin Williams' opinions. The fact that they have everything to gain from the case going a particular way should illustrate the bias they have. On top of this, Dr. Williams admitted that Lush was willing to release a product not containing Drufo, once again casting doubt upon the validity of the study. As the party with the burden of proof, the plaintiff was tasked with proving 4 elements of negligence, and we have done just that. Lush put out a clearly carcinogenic fertilizer into the market. Lush's rushed and forced research ignored this carcinogenicity of Drufo. Lush failed to accept its mistakes and chased after profits instead, leading to crippling repercussions on Dakota's health. And Lush, through their laziness, caused the damages to Dakota that may never be solved again. With Dakota's every painful day in the future being an uncertain one, we as the plaintiff are asking for $11 million in compensation, as the day-to-day opportunities Dakota has are no more due to Lush. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I implore you to make the right decision and find Lush liable. Thank you.
Thank you. Defendants, closing, please.
Probability, not possibility. Causation, not correlation. Jury instruction number 10 asks that any fact you find must be based on probabilities, not possibilities. The plaintiff's entire argument is based on the possibility that Drufo led to Dakota Weirs' condition, based on the idea that there is a link between Drufo and cancer. But let me remind you that correlation is not causation. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Alyssa Avila, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent Lush Fertilizer. As my co-counsel told you at the start of this case, the plaintiff is asking you to jump to a conclusion, to find someone to blame for the unfair fact that Dakota Weirs has cancer. We are asking you not to jump to the wrong conclusion. Let's review the evidence you have received in this case. You heard from one of Mr. Doncourt's former employees who was fired from the company. Not only was Carson Durst fired, but they also saw employment from the competitor, Terry's Greenery. Carson Durst wants you to believe that they were fired for being a whistleblower, but all you have to do is look at Mr.'s testimony to realize that the information Durst claimed to have is unreliable, based on speculation, not solid scientific research. You also heard from Dr. Casey Rogers, a first-time expert witness in court who claims Drufo is carcinogenic. The only foundation for this claim is from a study that was conducted on rats. Dr. Rogers then conducted his own study to examine whether or not Drufo is carcinogenic in humans. This study was inconclusive, not peer-reviewed, nor was it duplicated. Dr. Rogers found no concrete evidence to support their claim. You heard the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs, a talented young individual whose life has done a 180 as a result of being diagnosed with cancer. Dakota worked in the landscaping industry, where coming into contact with various chemicals is a given. While watching TV, Dakota saw a news story that suggested Drufo led to cancer. And what did Dakota do? Feeling devastated and understandably eager to blame someone for their diagnosis, Dakota jumped to the conclusion that Drufo and Lush were to blame. Now, you heard from our three witnesses, Mr. Doncourt, Dr. Williams, and Skylar Weirs, all of whom are driven by passion, a moral code, and a feeling of responsibility for the greater good. Mr. Doncourt, CEO of Lush Fertilizer, ensures his products are clean, safe, and eco-friendly. He explained the various steps that each product at Lush undergoes, including the fertilizer, the extensive research, the thorough toxicology analysis, and the review done by the EPA, a government agency, all of which led to the sound and reasonable conclusion that Lush Fertilizer is safe. The brains of the company, Dr. Williams, explained the credibility of her research and why her work is valid, concrete, and trustworthy. Dr. Williams, an experienced toxicologist, explained why Dr. Rogers' study is flawed as he jumped to invalid conclusions. This contrasts with Dr. Williams' sound approach when evaluating evidence, which allowed her to make a credible conclusion that Drufo is a safe chemical. Skylar Weirs explained her reasoning as to why her research and testimony today are not acts of family betrayal, but of ethically motivated decisions. She did not think twice about doing her research on the product that allegedly gave her twin cancer. The results of the research, that Drufo and Lush Fertilizer are safe and do not cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Members of the jury, we as the defense are not diminishing the severity of the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs' condition, but rather are asking you to thoroughly weigh the facts to make an honest verdict. Plaintiff claims our client chose capital over compassion, but wouldn't that be reflected in Mr. Doncourt's charitable contributions, which have not altered in the last 20 years? They claim Lush was negligent, yet federal and state law did not require a warning label on the fertilizer, but Lush put one regardless. Do not jump to the hasty conclusion that plaintiff offers. The facts show that Dakota's condition was not caused by Drufo. Perhaps it was caused by his exposure to all of the other chemicals they used during the 4 years in the landscaping industry. Perhaps it was caused by some other environmental factor. The plaintiff did not meet the burden of proving it is probable that Dakota's cancer was caused by Drufo. You might conclude it is possible, but let me remind you that correlation is not causation. Possibility is not probability. My co-counsel and I know that after weighing the information given to you, you will do your duty as honorable people of the court and find our client, Lush Fertilizer, not liable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I understand that there is no time left for rebuttal by the plaintiff for closing. Is that correct? Timekeepers?
Your Honor, defense would like to give the remainder of our closing time to plaintiff if they would like to use it for a rebuttal.
Well, I will, in light of that, I will offer plaintiff's counsel another minute. You care to use it?
Yes, Your Honor. That would be very gracious of the defense.
Please proceed.
Now, the defense mentions that they put a warning label, yet it obviously was flawed with the misspelling of it. On top of this, all of their research was easily disproved by Dr. Rogers' work. Furthermore,
Stop.
Okay, thank you. The evidentiary portion of the trial has now concluded. While the scoring panelists are completing their scoring and submitting the scoring, what I would normally do if this were a live presentation is I would ask the members of the gallery to stand up and give a round of applause to the students on both teams that presented today. And following that, I would ask the students to stand up and turn around and face the gallery and give the gallery a round of applause. And it's kind of, it's hard to do that by Zoom, but if you'll indulge me, I want to do that at least virtually or hypothetically, because especially regarding the applause for the gallery. I've been involved in the program for a long time, as I've said, and I've been a coach and a parent, and now I'm a volunteer as a presiding judge. And I know from my personal and family experience how hard the students work, but I also know how important to this process the support system that the students have that comes from particularly the coaches, but also the parents, other family members, and friends of the students. So I would just personally like to thank the gallery today for your involvement and investment in this proceeding. You're a big part of the program, and even if your kids don't tell you, they are teenagers after all, I want you to know that I personally appreciate your participation in the excellence of the presentation that we saw today. So thank you all, and thanks again to the students as well. So I think if the courtroom monitor could let me know when the scoring panelists have submitted their scores, all three of them, we'll have an opportunity for a critique or a chat back. And I will give the scoring panelists, if they wish to provide some a critique. I would ask you, we are running a little late, and I would ask you to limit your critiques to a minute or two per panelist. And then I'll see what the time looks like, and I may have a few comments myself. So sit back and relax a little bit until the scoring panelists finish their job.
David, I'm finished if you want me to start while others are wrapping up.
Well, have the panelists submitted?
I have.
Well,
I don't know about everybody. Yeah.
yeah, let's wait until all three are, like the rules say all three need to be submitted before we start critiques.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for participating. We have the scoring panelists, so whenever you're ready, you're dismissed.
Okay, let's go ahead with brief critiques and chatbacks. So please, please proceed.
Hi, I'll jump in. My name is Robin Willie. I work for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for the Air Division. Before that, I was at the Attorney General's office for a number of years. I've been a scoring panelist in this tournament for a very long time. I thought the teams today were excellent. In the interest of time, I'm not going to give person-specific comments. I'm just going to largely comment on the teams. The witnesses were wonderful, especially Mr. Weirs, who were very sympathetic. I thought all of the witnesses did a great job answering unfavorable questions by trying to also present favorable facts. I thought that was very well done. I thought the plaintiff's team really excelled in objections. I mean, it almost seems like you guys were prepared for an objection to every question and had responses written out and had thought through potential objections. It was really well done. I thought that was terrific. I thought the defense team was very persistent. You did not let witnesses leave the stand without really dogging them for the answers that you were looking for. I think both teams, you really showed that you put a ton of time into this, very thoughtful, wonderful presence. And I just want to congratulate you on a truly excellent job today.
Hey, thank you. Lisa, you have
Sure.
anything
Thank you.
to say?
Sure. My name's Lisa Thompson. I'm a water attorney in Denver, Colorado. I've been practicing for about 18 years now. And I just finished a trial this past fall and winter where we had a number of experts. And I was just really, really impressed with putting on their credentials, proving their ability to be admitted into court as an expert. And then also the voir dire was excellent on one of the experts where you prove, frankly, I think outside of moot court that particular witness probably wouldn't have been admitted as an expert, in my opinion. But so that was a very nice job. So I really just wanted to commend all the students. This is my first time actually scoring for moot court, and I was incredibly impressed. I do want to mention that the opening and closing statements were really impressive on both sides. Very strong, very clear. I really liked how you guys tied your story back together again. I thought that was really impressive. And then also just mentioning on objections. I mean, objections to me is one of the hardest parts about being on your feet as an attorney and making quick objections and responding to them. And everyone did a very, very nice job with that, citing to the rules of evidence. And I thought your objections were good. They weren't overdone. You didn't make too many of them, but you made them when they were appropriate. So very, very nice job on all around.
All right, thank you. Do we have another panelist who would like to comment?
Hi, I think I'm the third scoring panelist, and I don't have a lot to add. I guess, first of all, my name is Allison. I'm an attorney. I do commercial litigation at a law firm downtown. And this is my first time judging this as well, so I didn't have a lot. I didn't know what to expect, but I was very impressed with all of you, understanding that you're all in high school and not real lawyers, but being able to put on something of this quality is super impressive at your age. I was really impressed with both sides' ability to really understand and use the rules of evidence to your favor and respond to those objections when they popped up. And I think that's probably one of the hardest parts of doing mock trial, because obviously you guys can plan and prepare for kind of your direct examination and your opening and closing, but being able to be nimble on your feet to the things that you can't prepare for is really difficult. And I thought that you all did a really, really great job.
Okay, thank you. I will be very brief. I echo completely the comments from all three of our scoring panelists. This was an overall wonderful presentation on both sides. I guess one that stood out especially to me, I'll go ahead and mention it, but I don't want anybody to think that this is because I don't think everybody did a good job. But I would like Mr. Borolak, I may be butchering that name. Are you still, oh, there you are.
Yep.
Forgive me if I mispronounce your name. I'll just call you David. That one's easy for me.
Perfect, thank you.
I thought you did a great job as an expert. My job, my day job as a lawyer, I get involved with experts a lot. I do construction law, and experts are rampant in that field. And you gave a completely credible and accurate portrayal of an expert witness. You were confident, you had good eye contact, you didn't read your answers, you knew the answers to the questions, not just on direct, but you responded very well on cross, which is an element or a result of preparation. And that, of course, goes back to what I said earlier and what the panelists have said about the hard work and the dedication and the preparation. The thought went into preparing for this process. So good work. You withered some good questions, some potentially damaging questions in cross. You did a great job. Okay, and again, this round is the type of reason that I do the volunteer work as a judge. I just really enjoyed this presentation by both sides because of the uniform excellence of everybody, and with a few standouts from a very good proceeding today. So I thank you all personally, and again, I thank your supporters personally. This was very enjoyable for me, and that's why I do it. And I think that's enough said. I appreciate all your participation and the excellence of the presentation. So I think courtroom monitor, if everything has been done, we can close this proceeding. Are you okay with that? I think we're okay to close. So thank you all. And good luck to both teams in the rest of the tournament.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
Thank you so much.
Your Honor.
We're gonna leave.